We younger Negro artists who create now intend to express our individual dark-skinned selves without fear or shame. If white people are pleased, we are glad. If they are not, it doesn't matter. We know we are beautiful. Langston Hughes. One of the most influential movements in African American literary history, the Harlem Renaissance embraced literary, musical, theatrical, and visual arts. Participants sought to reconceptualize the Negro, apart from white stereotypes that had influenced black people's relationship to their heritage and to each other.
The Great Migration of African Americans was the major contributing factor to the Harlem Renaissance. African Americans began migrating from rural spaces into the South to more urban spaces in the North. This push into the cities expanded black communities, creating a greater market for a Renaissance to spark. Other causes for the Harlem Renaissance included the dramatically rising levels of literacy, the economic prosperity of the 20s and opening socio-economic opportunities, and developing racial pride.
Many intellectuals led the Harlem Renaissance with activist movements. Among them included W.E.B. Du Bois, Du Bois's Niagara Movement, which called for opposition to racial segregation and disenfranchisement. Marcus Garvey founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which advocated the Back to Africa movement and claimed that blacks should never be accepted as equals in America. They also founded many national organizations dedicated to suppressing African American civil rights, such as the National Urban League and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored Peoples.
By the start of the 19th century, culture, art, music, and dance flourished in Harlem. Blacks were the rave and blossomed in the center of cultural innovations. Nightclubs, also referred to as speakeasies at the time, stemmed from the Prohibition Act and provided a place to drink alcohol, gather, dance, and have fun. One of the well-known nightclubs was the Cotton Club in New York City, which featured many of the greatest African-American entertainers of the era, including Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Bessie Smith, and Cab Calloway. Jazz, which was traditionally influenced by black churches, thrived in these nightclubs and theaters. The Savoy Ballroom was another popular dance venue where many dances became famous, including the Lindy Hop. Jazz dissipated through white culture as well. Paul Whiteman, a white man known as the Jazz King, adapted jazz as his own and eventually made an income of $100,000, exceeding black jazz artists' incomes by a mile. Major performers of the time included Duke Ellington, recognized as one of the most influential figures in jazz, and Louis Armstrong, an American jazz trumpeter and singer.
Art was also a dominating factor in the Harlem Renaissance. One of the most prominent artists of the time was Aaron Douglas, a painter in geometric design. Influenced by jazz music and folk traditions, Douglas created many illustrations of black subjects, cultivated wealthy patrons to support the movement, and worked as an activist. Augusta Christine Savage was a prominent sculptor who opened the Savage Studio of Arts and Crafts, where she taught sculpture. Savage also worked to assure that black artists were equally represented in the Federal Arts Project of the Works Progress Administration. Early Renaissance authors Charles W. Chesnutt, Claude McKay, and James Weldon Johnson paved the way for other authors with their literary works. Most black literary writers covered issues on black life in the South and North, racial identity, racial issues, and equality. Major authors included Langston Hughes, an American poet, novelist, and playwright, and Zora Neale Hurston, an American folklorist and author, best known for her 1937 novel, Their Eyes Were Watching God.
A number of factors contributed to the decline of the Harlem Renaissance in the mid-1930s. When the Great Depression hit, economic pressure plagued cities, causing incomes to drop and eventually the creativity to fade. Organizations such as the NAACP and Urban League, which had actively promoted the Renaissance in the 1920s, shifted their interest to economic and social issues in the 1930s. Many influential black writers, including Langston Hughes, James Weldon Johnson, and Du Bois, left New York City, relocating to France. The Harlem Riot of 1935, Harlem's first race riot, also led to the decline of the Renaissance, creating tension between the black community and white shop owners in Harlem who profited from the community.
The Harlem Renaissance changed forever the dynamics of Afro-American culture in the United States. It cultivated Afrocentrism through a revolution in American art, music, and culture. It gave blacks a new identity and was a perfect example of a group that had been oppressed for such a long time. Freeing themselves in all aspects, black proved to everyone that blacks were equal in every regard. The Renaissance redefined how America viewed blacks. Blacks are now competent of living and surviving in the urban lifestyle, capable of producing great things that could appeal to black audience as well as white ones.
In a sense, the Harlem Renaissance never really ended. Many works were rediscovered, creating a pathway for the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s, and inspiring artists to create jazz, eventually leading to hip-hop, Motown, and rap. Furthermore, many Renaissance authors wrote pieces of literary works now considered to be classics. For thousands of blacks around the world, the Harlem Renaissance was proof that whites did not hold a monopoly on literature, art, and culture. Blacks were now given a means of self-expression and able to glorify their own culture.